welcome to Blues TV's A Living History of Macclesfield Rugby Club. In this volume, Mike Keeling, founder of the Macclesfield touring team, the Rugga Buggers, tells us how they came about, how a desire to play rugby whenever, wherever and however fostered many lifetime friendships that form the foundations of the Rugga Buggers.
Well, it started a long time ago, Bob. Back in when I left school in 1979, I got a phone call one September, Friday, and my dad said, John Eastow's on the phone from Macclesfield Rugby Club. Never heard of him, and he said to me, "You've left school now, I understand from one of your teachers that you're interested in carrying on playing rugby." Yeah, okay. I was 19, and that's how it all began. I turned out the following day. Turned up at Titherington way back in the day. In Titherington, started playing for the 4th team, and because I had played hooker at school, they asked me to play hooker in between Chris Price and Jim Morgan, who some people might remember from their good old days. This was, of course, the amateur days of a long time ago. Rugby was a different game then, and we had great fun. Very quickly moved into the back row because they realised I wasn't a very good hooker at all, and there were other people who were better. Moved to the back row, and then at some stage in the future I moved into the backs, started on the wing and made my way through centre. By 1987 I'd managed to procure the captaincy of the 4th team. We'd moved to Priory Park then, and on the very first game of my captaincy I turned up and we had 3 centres and no outside half. So being the captain, I had no choice but to start playing 10, and probably played 10 for most of my rugby career after that. In 1994, for business reasons, I had to move away, and we went down to Somerset, a place called Wells, smallest city in England, and obviously started playing rugby for Wells, 2nd team and 1st team, and Somerset. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to get together with my old mates again? And so we decided that's what we do. Phone calls were made, faxes were sent, letters were posted. Of course, the idea then was, where do we go? What do we do? Who do we play? So geographically, the middle of the country was the obvious choice because people were living all over the place, London and the West Country and the North and so on. So we plumped for Rugby, the home of the game. We all arrived on a Friday, played a game on the Saturday, and went home again on the Sunday, and it was a great time, and it was just a one-off reunion with my mates. Obviously we weren't the Macclesfield Rugby Club, we couldn't play under the banner of Macclesfield Rugby Club, everyone was playing different places, so we called ourselves the Rugga Buggers. Be careful of the spelling, it's R-U-G-G-A, B-U-G-G-A-S, and that's how it started. We never intended to go any further, but a couple of years later we decided to do it again. By this time some people had moved on. I introduced a few more friends from Wells Rugby Club, a couple of new people came from other places, and so it's evolved over the years. We've been doing it now every year since. I think we've played 23 times. We have a pretty enviable win rate, but the most important thing is that we stay in the same hotel and we play different clubs in and around Rugby. We did actually have for 5 years a major exhibition in the proper rugby museum in Rugby, alongside all the memorabilia from the All Blacks and the Springboks and all the other teams that you can imagine. Was a big Rugga Buggers display, with a jersey and a tie and all the rest of it. I've actually brought our current Rugga Buggers jersey along, just to show you. There we are. You'll see it's the royal blue of Macclesfield. Most memorable Rugga Buggers trip is possibly when we managed to get the opportunity to play on the main pitch at Rugby School, on Big Side, where William Webb Ellis allegedly picked the ball up and ran with it. And that was quite a day, and we played against the Webb Ellis Eclectics, which was a team that was put together by Pete Harper, alongside Roundhesians of Leeds, and they all came down for the day. Beautiful summer's day, and we had a fabulous game of rugby on one of the best pitches you could imagine ever playing on. Absolutely flat, it was like a billiard table, it was absolutely beautiful. And we had a tour around the school, it really was very, very exciting. So that's the Rugga Buggers. The endearing thing about it for the younger lads who are coming through, a lot of them are playing rugby competitively in leagues and all the rest of it, and what they're essentially doing is going back to the way that we played rugby, Bob, where we had a drink on a Friday, we had a drink on a Saturday, and a bit of rugby thrown in the middle. There were no leagues in those days, it was all friendlies, and that's what we're doing now, and it's just fantastic to carry on that kind of amateur style Corinthian rugby.
And so the Rugga Buggers became the spiritual home for dads, lads and rugby wanderers the world over.
One of the interesting things about the history and the development of the Rugga Buggers is the fact that quite a number, as I mentioned before, the sons of the original Rugga Buggers now playing for us. So David Mayer played for us, and his brother Paul, who was a long-standing member at Macclesfield Rugby Club. David's two sons, Charlie and James, have both played for the Rugga Buggers. Steve Branch, that most people will know in the club, his son Edward plays for us. My dear old friend Pete Nall, who's sadly no longer with us, his son Tom Nall, great rugby player, he plays for us as well. And some of those other colts from that era are playing as well. Richard Shuttleworth and one or two others have come along and played for us. On the Somerset connection side, we have a guy called Mark Lansdowne. Both his sons, James and George, play for us. Simon Rowe's son, James Rowe, he had a spell at Bath. He's played for us as well. And so we're very much hoping that it's going to endure. My son played several times for us as well, although he lives in Canada now, so unfortunately doesn't make the trip. But yes, some of the people who play on the Rugga Buggers are not rugby players. Mark Lansdowne, I just mentioned, he played rugby at school when he was 14. He lives and works on a farm, always has done, so he had no time for rugby. But he plays every year. He'll come out, and that's the only rugby he ever plays. By his own admission, he's not the best rugby player in the world. I think diametrically opposed to that, probably the most highest ranking rugby player, if you want to term it like that, was a chap from New Zealand. He had an all-black trial, but he didn't make the grade, so obviously rubbish. Came over to the UK, played professionally for Cornish Pirates, played for Cornwall. He also played for Canterbury Crusaders when he was out there in New Zealand. He's a giant of a man, absolute giant. He's about 6'9". I don't know. I don't want to guess how much he weighs, but he is a second row forward, and he knows the game inside out. Sadly, he's riddled with arthritis now, so nothing like as mobile as he was. And sadly, he didn't play for us this year. But he's a great, great player.
As in the theatre, the actors change, but the stage remains the same.
One of the joys of going back to the same place every year is you start to establish some connections there. Obviously I mentioned the hotel. The hotel has changed hands about 4 times now. It's been refurbished. It's not the best hotel in the world. They tend to focus more on their food and so on rather than their accommodation, which is probably a good thing. But it's a great hotel. It's only 5 minutes walk into town and ideally placed for us and what we do. One memorable moment from that was, I don't know when it was, early 2000s I think. We played a game in April. It was a beautiful April day, and then bizarrely we had a snowstorm in the evening, which took everyone by surprise. And at about midnight somebody was knocking on the hotel door. So we went to go and lock him, let him in, because we thought obviously one of our guys was locked out, and it was Fred Truman. And Fred Truman, at the age of 80 odd, had been speaking at a local cricket club dinner, came outside, realised it was snowing, rang his wife. He was living in the hills of Yorkshire in those days, and she said, "Don't even think about coming out, you won't get here." So he found the nearest hotel, and guess who was staying in it? The Rugga Buggers were. So we sat up drinking with him till 3 o'clock in the morning, and he regaled us with stories of his cricket life, and he thought what we were doing was wonderful, back to the fun side of sport. There's a very famous, famous locally, Irish bar run by an Irishman in Rugby itself called Quigley's, and it has live Irish bands on and what have you, and it's also a rugby pub. The whole of the rugby, the inside of it is festooned with rugby shirts from Ireland and all over the world, and international jerseys of every colour, shade and description, and proudly up on the wall is a Rugga Bugga's jersey as well. So yeah, we've got links there. He even, well, I don't know whether he made the song or changed the words of an existing song. He made a song about the Rugga Buggas, and every year when we walk in there, he suddenly switches into this song and sings the song about the Rugga Buggas. So yeah, we have an establishment with Quigley's as well, and various other watering holes around Rugby. The Rugga Buggas is obviously an old-fashioned style short weekend tour, and obviously I can't get into too many details, you know, Bob, the golden rule. What goes on tour stays on tour, but of course there are only two types of tour, the ones you can't remember and the ones you can't forget, and this is usually both, actually. If you read the brochure that we put together some years ago, there are various rules about the tour which might give you an insight into what goes on. But one of the rules that we have is that soda siphons are not allowed up into people's bedrooms when they're asleep. So that is a golden rule, and clothing must be worn in the bar now as well. So I can't tell you what goes on, but those are the rules that we have at the club.
And rules are made for breaking.
Okay, so now we have to look at the future of the Rugga Buggas. Obviously it's been a long time since I've been running it, and look, most of the people who originally played, and just name check a few people like Kevin Wright, Jeff Leeds, Paul Mayer, David Mayer, people from Ireland and Scotland and Wales and Australia and Sweden have played for us. But it's becoming more and more difficult for them to turn out now because they're all moving on in years and various forms of arthritis and whatever. So what next? Well, as I say, we've got some of the younger ones in, and they're playing quite a bit of regular rugby, and the idea is now for them to take it on in the future. Nobody's put their hand up yet, but I think they would mourn its passing if they didn't take it on. So I'm quite happy to hand it over in the next few years. Obviously I'll still be tagging along just for the beer, if not the run out. Interestingly, our oldest player this year was the president of Wilmslow Rugby Club, and Nigel Day, who played for us, and he's over 60. Stevie Branch at 59, so I suppose at 57 I'm still a youngster myself. But no, it is becoming a faster, harder game for everyone nowadays, with the rule changes and the simplicity of the game, to speed it up. So yeah, it's a young man's game, and we're just hoping that the likes of James Mayer and Rick Armstrong and Rick Shuttleworth and Tom Nall and Eddie Branch and James and George Lansdowne and James Rowe, we're hoping these guys are going to take this on and move it forward, and probably with their friends as well, and they'll expand it and they'll bring in new ideas, and who knows, they may even take the tour overseas. But for the time being, it's Rugga Buggas, it's in rugby, we love it, it is what it is, and probably its repetition is part of its glory.
Mike, thank you very much.
My pleasure.